Today we're diving into the story of Hypatia of Alexandria. She was one of the greatest minds of the ancient world, a brilliant philosopher and mathematician. But her story is also a really chilling reminder of what can happen when brilliance itself becomes a target.
So here's the mystery that really sits at the heart of this. How does a woman, celebrated for her mind, someone who taught everyone, Christians, pagans, you name it, end up meeting such an absolutely horrific end? Well, the answer, it's a messy, volatile mix of politics, religion, and what happens when a real person gets twisted into a dangerous symbol.
And look, to really get the weight of her story, we have to start right at the end, with the absolute horror of her death in March of 415 AD. I mean, the details that have come down to us, they're not just shocking. They paint a picture of a public, almost ritualistic killing. This wasn't just violence. This was violence designed to send a powerful, terrifying message.
So the big question is, why? Why did this happen? To figure that out, we have to pull the camera back from the act itself. We need to look at the city she lived in, the culture, and the bitter, bitter power struggle that put a target squarely on her back.
And it really all starts with the city she called home. You just can't separate Hypatia's story from the city of Alexandria, a place that was as brilliant as it was deeply, deeply divided.
I want you to just try and imagine a city that was kind of like the Cambridge or the Silicon Valley of its time. I mean, it was the absolute center for philosophy, for math, for astronomy. But just beneath that shiny intellectual surface, it was a total pressure cooker. You had these violent clashes bubbling up between pagans, Jews, and the Christian community, which was getting more and more powerful by the day.
And just look at how fast things were changing. We're talking less than 100 years for Christianity to go from a tolerated faith to the official state religion. That kind of rapid shift, it creates huge amounts of tension. And Hypatia's life? It unfolded right at the breaking point of all of this.
Right at the center of this whole conflict, you got two major players. On one side, there's Orestes. He's the Roman governor, the prefect, and he represents the old-school secular power of the Roman Empire. Then on the other side, you have Cyril, the new Bishop of Alexandria. And this guy is absolutely determined to push the church's power into every single corner of city life. Their rivalry wasn't just political, it was bitter, it was personal. And for Hypatia, it was going to be fatal.
Okay, so who exactly was this woman caught right in the middle of this political storm? Let's take a minute and meet the historical Hypatia, the actual person, and see how she built this incredible reputation for herself.
This quote right here, it just says so much about her intellectual authority. Think about it. This isn't just some student singing the praises of a teacher. This is a powerful Christian bishop basically asking his old teacher, a pagan woman, for permission to publish his work. That tells you everything you need to know about the immense respect she commanded across all these different communities.
So, Hypatia's whole philosophy was something called Neoplatonism. And for her and her students, math and astronomy, well, they weren't just about crunching numbers or mapping stars. No, they were seen as tools, as a way to understand the fundamental perfect logic of the universe. It was a path to understanding the divine. And that idea, that's the glue that held all of her teachings together.
Now, it's really important to get this part right. She wasn't an inventor in the way we think of one today. She was something that, you could argue, was even more critical for her time. She was a brilliant editor, a commentator, and an amazing teacher. Her real genius was taking this incredibly dense, complex stuff, like advanced geometry and algebra, and making it understandable. She was a preserver of knowledge, a crucial link in the chain.
And get this, she wasn't just some abstract thinker stuck in theory. Nope, she was a hands-on scientist. She actually built instruments and taught her students how to use them. We're talking about things like the astrolabe for looking at the stars and the hydrometer for measuring the density of liquids. She was all about bridging that gap between big philosophical ideas and real-world, practical science.
But here is the tragic part. All of that, her public prominence, her intellectual authority, that's exactly what put her directly in the path of that brutal power struggle between Orestes and Cyril. It's what led to the final, terrible tragedy.
See, Orestes, the Roman prefect, he could feel he was losing ground to the church. So he made a very strategic move. He cultivated a close relationship with Hypatia. Why? Because by having the city's most respected intellectual, who by the way was a pagan, by his side, he was rallying support from all the non-Christians. It was a clear signal of his resistance to Bishop Cyril's growing power. Whether she wanted to be or not, Hypatia became a living symbol of secular authority.
And this is where you can see just how fast things spiraled completely out of control. First, there's political violence. Then it escalates to a mob of monks physically attacking the prefect in the street. And then, and this is the crucial part, the blame gets shifted. Suddenly, rumors start flying. A targeted campaign paints Hypatia as this evil pagan sorceress, the one whispering in Orestes' ear, preventing peace. She was turned into the scapegoat for the entire political mess.
But history is never just one simple story, right? Depending on which ancient source you pick up, you get a totally different take on who is to blame. You got the Christian historian who blames a wild mob, but is super careful not to mention Cyril. Then there's the pagan philosopher who points the finger right at Cyril, saying it was all about jealousy. And then, fast forward a few centuries, and a Coptic bishop is actually celebrating her murder as a good thing. It's just a stark reminder that history is always written by people with an angle.
So what's the consensus today? Well, most modern scholars agree on this. Hypatia was murdered for political reasons. Think about it. Attacking the Roman prefect directly, way too dangerous. But attacking his most famous, most symbolic, and frankly most vulnerable ally, a pagan woman, that was a brutally effective way to shatter his support network and advance Cyril's own political game.
But the story doesn't just stop with her death. In a way, her murder was only the beginning. It was the start of her transformation from a real, historical person into a powerful and often pretty distorted modern myth.
Just let that sink in for a second. After she died, her memory pretty much faded away. For more than 1,000 years, she was basically a footnote in history books. It wasn't until the Enlightenment that her story was dug up again and, well, repurposed for a brand new era.
And ever since then, wow, she has worn a lot of different masks. To the thinkers of the Enlightenment, she was a martyr for science, a victim of religious fanaticism. To the Victorians, she became this tragic, romantic heroine. And for us, today, she's often held up as this powerful feminist icon, a true pioneer for women in STEM. Do you see the pattern? Each era basically projects its own fights and its own values right onto her story.
And that really brings us to the core idea here. There are almost two Hypatias, right? You've got the historical person, the brilliant scholar, the revered teacher whose whole life was about preserving knowledge. And then you have the symbol, the powerful martyr whose horrific death has turned her into this potent icon for science, for feminism, for the fight against intolerance. So that leaves us with one last question to chew on. The myth of Hypatia. It's powerful, it's inspiring, for sure. But when we turn a real person into a symbol, we always risk losing the messy, complicated reality of who they actually were. So I'll leave you with this. What do we lose when we remember the martyr, but maybe forget the meticulous, brilliant scholar?